political allies and protection. And Pinochet's agents, who were versed in only the most crude forms of torture, wanted someone to teach them the more sophisticated methods of interrogation. Today, the streets and squares of the Chilean capital, Santiago, show a country that is prosperous and peaceful. 40 years ago, in 1973, these same streets were witnesses to a ruthless crackdown by the Chilean military under General Pinochet against the supporters of the democratically elected socialist president. Colonia Dignidad was drawn into the conflict. Schaeffer was a staunch supporter of the general and offered the colony and its facilities to serve the dictatorship. Colonia Dignidad was turned into a torture center. General Pinochet and Paul Schaeffer shared a common hatred of communism. So the enclosed colony became a place not only to torture suspected opponents of the dictatorship, but also to practice experiments against the prisoners.
Pinochet's personal secret service, DINA, used hidden torture camps. It was far off Santiago. It had originally a big fence around it. Schaeffer controlled his own people very strictly. It had a hospital, which is necessary if you torture people. It had guest rooms. It had a radio station to communicate with Santiago and so on. The conditions were simply ideal.
One of those who was taken there was Luis Peebles. Today, he is a well-known psychiatrist at a hospital in a working-class district.
Joining me now is Miami Herald senior investigator.
In 1975, he was a young medical student, a member of a militant left-wing movement, when he was picked up by the Chilean Security Agency and interrogated, initially at a military base, but then moved to Colonia Dignidad.
El método de poner los electrodos fue extraordinariamente minucioso. Es decir, me pusieron electrodos por todo el cuerpo, ¿eh? Desde debajo de las uñas de los pies, en las manos, en los tobillos, en los genitales, introduciéndolo por el pene, introduciéndolo dentro del ano, introduciéndolo dentro de la boca, la nariz. Entonces todo este tipo de sofisticación, de preparación para el interrogatorio con corriente era algo completamente fuera de lo común.
Peebles was kept here in this underground chamber at Colonia Dignidad.
Durante la tortura se corría el casco y yo podía ver a las personas. En un momento dado se abrió para atrás así y yo vi directamente a las personas que estaban allí y vi a Paul Schaeffer directamente.
Peebles was one of the few to have got out alive. Scores of others who were brought to the colony simply disappeared. Dozens of bodies were discovered in a mass grave 20 years later. Around the same time, in another part of the colony, Winfried was growing up totally oblivious to what was going on around him.
Jamás escuché la radio, jamás vi un diario, salvo recortes que nos mostraban muy veladamente, y jamás vi televisión, salvo ciertas noticias grabadas que la mostraban a la comunidad que decía relación con el régimen de Pinochet y temas políticos para adoctrinarnos a favor de Pinochet.
Schaeffer made sure that his flock was kept isolated from the world around. And this isolation was reinforced by the geography of the colony, making any escape extremely difficult. But people did escape. Some sought refuge at the German embassy, and incredibly were actually sent back to the colony. The embassy in the early days of Colonia Dignidad had a close relationship with Schaeffer. It even provided him with a diplomatic number plate. But in 1984, three of Schaeffer's closest followers, fed up with the abuse, succeeded in escaping to Germany. There, they accused Schaeffer of keeping people against their will under a regime of slavery and violence. Schaeffer was facing another problem. The community was dwindling in numbers, and with a very low birth rate, his supply of young boys was running out. He decided to open the colony up to the local population.
La Colonia Dignidad aprovechó la admiración de los chilenos en general a la disciplina y el orden alemán, a la limpieza, la pulcritud, la belleza de lo que en Colonia Dignidad se construyó. Incluso el coro, la orquesta de música, todo era perfecto. Y una aspiración, casi un privilegio, era que un niño chileno fuera recibido por los alemanes.
Eran abusos muy específicos. Un abuso muy específico, siempre fueron abusos en su vehículo, en lugares específicos dentro del fondo, sin que nadie viera. Él tomaba ciertos resguardos, una mente enferma, por lo tanto, igual la mente enferma es astuta. Tomaba ciertos resguardos.
Did Paul Schaeffer make you do things against your will?
Exactamente, muchas veces. Pero sí había que acceder a hacerlas por un tema de que era el tío, el oncle.
In 1995, this woman's son had the courage to tell her that Schaeffer had raped him. She, fearing the power and reach of Paul Schaeffer, did not go to the local lawyer. Instead, she went 400 kilometers away to Santiago.
Lo que me decidió tomar el caso fue que si un niño de 12 años que había escapado de Colonia Dignidad estaba dispuesto a mantener su denuncia, a buscar ayuda para sus amigos, para otros niños que estaban en Colonia Dignidad, como abogado éticamente no podía sino ayudar a ese niño y enfrentarme como él a la Colonia Dignidad.
By now, a democratic government had replaced General Pinochet. The new president was keen to go after Paul Schaeffer. Chilean authorities were now actively investigating conditions at Colonia Dignidad. It was only after Pinochet left power that Schaeffer's support system began to collapse. It wasn't communism that brought down his carefully constructed fortress, as he'd always feared. It was the return of democracy to Chile. Frightened that he would face criminal charges, Paul Schaeffer fled, just as he had done nearly 40 years earlier. Schaeffer's inner circle continued to assert its hold over the colony. But with investigators on their heels, they had to make changes to cover their tracks. It was at this time that Winfred and others like him, who were now of legal age, were taken out of the colony to prevent authorities from questioning them.